Hi there, welcome back to the holding. Just a quick video to tell you some of the vegetables I'm going to be sowing in this month. We're just coming into April. Obviously the clocks have gone forward, the days are getting longer every day, they're getting a few minutes longer, and the list of things really that you can grow now is getting longer and longer too. So this is by no means an all you can sow in April video at all. This is just telling you what I'm going to sow in April. Now I do tend, you might think some of the things I'm planting should have already been planted, and some have, some are successive sowings that I'm doing now, but I do tend to leave certain things a little later than most. I've just had a lot of sort of, in the past I've brought things down here because I haven't got a greenhouse or anything at home, and I bring things down here and we've had late frost and I've lost a lot of stuff over the years, and I've just learned if I just hold off, it's hard because you get itchy feet definitely, but if I just hold off for a couple of 3 weeks longer than perhaps is normally recommended on a lot of the other videos that you've probably watched, I just find for me it means I don't lose as much if we should get a sudden bitter period of a day or two or hard frost, and to be honest, things catch up, you know, a couple of 3 weeks. Once the weather warms up, it doesn't make a lot of difference. Things tend to just start flying away and it all catches up anyway, and I really don't think it makes a lot of difference. It just saves the heartache of seeing things come on nice and healthy and then coming down and finding them all dead. But anyway, so first week of April I'm going to be putting in my Oregon sugar snap peas. So these are a snap pea, you eat the whole pod and everything. I'm not going to go into too much detail, I'm just going to tell you what I'm doing. I also put in the first week my second sowings of leeks. So I did plant some leeks in March, and I in the sort of first week of March, and I do a second sowing first week of April, just so I've got 2 batches that I can then pick from to transplant later on. So one of the things that I leave later than probably most people is my tomatoes. Now I have put these in as late as early May in the past, especially after one year I brought all my tomato plants down and I lost them all. I think we were just into the second week of June and we had a hard frost and I lost all my tomatoes that year, and it was, you know, really disheartening. So but this year this is one thing I'm going to keep under the grow light. If I'm at all unsure about the weather, I'm just going to keep them at home under the grow light. I did have a low wattage, like a 30-watt grow light, and a couple of years ago I bought one. It's equivalent of about 600 watts, I think it is, but I think the actual usage, because it's LEDs, is only about 100 watt. But I just have that on a timer, about sort of 18 hours on, something like that, and I will keep my tomatoes under the grow light just so I can keep an eye on the weather, and I won't bring them down here until I'm 100% sure I'm not going to lose them. So the 3 varieties I sow, excuse me, Gardener's Delight, Sun Gold, which is an F1, and Roma. The Romas are I use for making my sort of pasta sauces and things like that. They were more sort of meaty, fleshy sort of tomato. So they're the 3 varieties that I grow. I'm also this month going to be getting in some sort of fast growing turnips. I do like my turnips. These are an F1, they're called Alderton. And I'm going to carry on. So through April you can continue to do your sowings of carrots, spring onions, anything like that you've sown perhaps from February, from March. You can continue to do successive sowings through April as well. And I'm going to do some more sowings of cabbage. What I do is I use these cell trays, and I've got 2 or 3 different types. So this is Greyhound. I've also got Red Drumhead and what's the other one? Durham Early, I think they're called. And then I've got Savoy, which I sow later on for winter. But I just sow a couple of rows, so sort of seven in a row, maybe 14 of each type, and out of those, you know, I may get 8 good seedlings. So I just do successive sowings of those, and at the end of the day, seed is quite cheap, and if you end up with too many plants, it doesn't hurt to just pick the strongest ones and put the rest in the compost. So carrots, like I say, can continue to do sowings of carrots. You can also now into April start to sow direct outside, so I will start to sow my carrots direct outside, and I will also start to sow my parsnips outside. So I have, obviously, like I said, I'm trying doing some in the sow trays in my March video, germinating with heat mats at home. But in April, probably first week, second week in April, I will do some a bed of parsnips out in a no-dig garden as well, direct sown. I continue to do successive sowings of lettuce as well, just a little sprinkle in a pot, you know, try and get a couple of dozen plants every sort of 3 weeks or something. And like I say, I've got a couple of different types of salad onions, white Lisbon and ramrod, which is a new one I'm going to try. So I will continue to do a few successive sowings of those, but what I will tend to do now is to do them just in the sow trays. So in February and March, I did a couple of rows inside here in the polytunnel in a raised bed. From now on, I will tend to do things just in the sow tray so that I can keep them in here, and then I can kind of just plonk them in somewhere. It's much easier if you've got things in sows. If you find you've got a bit of space, or you could perhaps interplant with other things, but you can just bang them in wherever. It's much easier to find somewhere for them if they're in little pots or sows. So I will also, in April, be putting in my cauliflower. This is all the year round cauliflower, and my broccoli or calabrese. I'll be starting now. And then as we get towards the end of the month, I will start to sow. So you probably, third or fourth week in April, I will sow my zucchinis, courgettes. I've got a couple of types. I've got a yellow one as well. I couldn't find the seed for those. I think they're in a tin in my fridge in the garage, but I've got yellow and your basic zucchini green ones. I will also, at the end of the month, start my chard. Now I do two types. I've got one that's called Magenta Sunset, which actually didn't do very well last year for some reason. The germination rate wasn't particularly great, and the ones that did grow just didn't produce particularly fantastic plants. So I don't know if there's something, the seed wasn't a particularly good batch, I don't know. But the one I mainly grow and always have had good luck with is the Bright Lights, which I think everyone probably has seen and heard of, and they always do really well. The reason I don't do those too early, things like chard, if they get a late frost on them, too much cold on them, it will just encourage them to bolt early on. So you want to kind of keep the cold off those really as best you can. And I'm going to do my sweet corn sort of probably third or fourth week again in April. This is a variety I haven't tried before, called F1 Golden Fleece. Now this year, these new packs, you can see these lovely gold foil packs, and they are resealable, so you tear the top and they've got a resealable click top. It's from a new company that I've just set up an account with, and I'm trying. They're called Moles Seeds, British company as far as I'm aware, and they just do much bigger packs of seeds. So this is 250 sweet corn seeds, and I think it's about like £3 or £4. Well, it's that amount, and all of these, that's 10 grams of chard. That's a whole lot of chard seed there again, and they're all about the price of a normal single pack of seeds, where you may only get perhaps 50 seeds or something in there. So it seems like a nice company. First time I've used it, but the prices are very reasonable, so take a look if you're interested. So also end of the month, I will be sowing my squashes. So I do I do basic sort of butternut squash, and I do a little squash that I have really sort of fallen in love with, and all the family love it, and it's called Honey Boat. It produces these little squashes about this sort of size. They probably weigh about £1 each. They're not huge, they're just fine for sort of a couple of people, and you can get as many as 18 on a plant is I think my record, and I've just really grown to like them. They're very sweet, and when you roast them they really caramelise nicely, and they just taste fantastic. They're probably my favourite squash. So I'll always do a butternut, but I do love these Honey Boat squashes, so I'm going to grow them every year. I'm also this year, and I'm going to do a separate little playlist on this, I bought some pumpkin seeds called Atlantic Giant. So just for a laugh, I'm going to try and grow a super huge pumpkin. These are like the world record sort of holding pumpkins all this type of pumpkin, the Atlantic Giant. And they do say that even with not particularly good care, in an average British summer, you can get a pumpkin up to 300 kilos. So that's going to be pretty impressive. I have tried a variety called 100 weight in the past, and I did produce a pumpkin that I could barely pick up off the ground. It's probably 60 or 70 kilos, I should imagine. but I just thought for a bit of fun, it'd be interesting to just see how big I can get one to grow. So that's something I will do in another video as well. So the other thing I will be starting at the end of this month, again, you may think it's a little bit late, but I will start planting my potatoes. So I've got two second early types of potatoes. I've got Wilger and Charlotte, and I've got two main crops, King Edward and Maris Piper. And I'm going to change things up a little bit this year. So I've got my potato patch over by where the green polytunnel was. I've grown potatoes there every single year for probably 10 years now, and I've never had any problems. There's a little bit of scab, but that's worse in hot years. The heat tends to affect that more than anything. But other than that, there's no disease issues or anything. But I just thought this year I'm going to perhaps give it a bit of a rest. So what has made me think about doing this is last year with the heat wave, I just didn't have enough water down here because I've got no mains. I didn't water the potatoes at all. I just gave them 1,000 litre IBC tank when they were flowering, and that was it. They had none for the whole rest of the heat wave. And when I went to start harvesting them, they were just all quite dinky little potatoes, only about half a dozen per plant. I just thought there's just no point. So I've left them. It's got a bit weedy. I didn't dig any more up. And I've actually checked, and a lot of the potatoes, because I always leave my main crop potatoes in the ground anyway, which I know might be frowned upon, but I'd never get much slug damage, and it's just easier than storing them. So I've always done that anyway. But a lot of the potatoes are still fine, so I'm actually just going to leave them in the ground in the hope that they might just come up as like volunteer potatoes. And so they're still all in the rows, all where they were. King Edwards, I've got Sarpo Mirror, Desiree, I think I've got. Couple of other different types in there. I've just left them all in, so I'm hoping that they are going to come up and give me a crop of potatoes anyway without having to plant any new ones, but we'll just see. Again, I'll follow up on that in the summer. But basically what I'm going to do with the potatoes, I've got a little 2.5 kilo bag of each type, and I'm going to do a couple of beds, perhaps one bed of each in the no dig garden, and then the rest I'm going to put into just big containers, and because I'm starting to get a bit of an excess of compost now. I reckon I'm making a good 12 cubic metres of compost in my system that I've got going, and I'm just starting to catch up with myself now. All the beds are topped up, so I'm going to have a good lot of compost left over. So I'm actually going to just do some big containers. I've got a lot of these tree buckets with the two handles left over from jobs. Obviously as a gardener I do a lot of planting, so I've got a lot of these big buckets left over, and I'm going to just try some potatoes in containers, which is something I've only ever done once or twice in the past. So I just thought I'd give it a go with purely my own homemade compost. But anyway, guys, I think that is a lot. I've got nothing else to say. But like I say, this isn't at all the only things you can plant. You can really kind of get going on most things now, especially if the weather does start to warm up a bit. It's a bit miserable and wet today, but just watch the weather and you can really kind of almost start to give anything a bit of a go now, especially if you've got somewhere outdoors, a greenhouse or something. But anyway, guys, take it easy and we will see you next time.